crisis. You bet it is. I can give you a good example of a crisis. Most of you probably know Steve Jobs, right? You know, Apple, guru, person who started back in 1976, started Apple, and 26 years later got fired from Apple. What happened with him? He was always innovative. He was always creative. That never changed. Steve always had that about him. If you read his history, read his lifestyle, he always had a new idea here, even through some of his folly of life, as we call it, as we all go through some of our young years. But one thing that he missed and lacked, and if you ever listen to his final speech he gave at one of the universities he spoke at, one thing he admitted very openly, that he was not a good manager. And through life he learned those skills, and it was hard for him to learn them. He knew how to be creative, but he didn't know how to be a manager. And as a result, he got fired from the very company that he created. Now, naturally, later on, he came back to that company and made it a great success and had a great ending. But just think, if Steve had had those managerial skills up front and worked the organization up front all the way to the end, how much greater Apple could be. And Apple's one of the greatest companies in the world right now, as you know, in terms of many aspects of it. But that's a good example of talking about a person with great innovative skills, great creativity, but poor managerial skills. So is it important? Yes, it is. Is there a crisis? Yes, there is. Many of us can tell you about management, but few of us can demonstrate or really teach you to be a manager, because it's hard work. It's hard work because we're talking about someone who's efficient and effective. So therefore, a manager's tool bag gets pretty heavy. We start putting things in there because you become a jack of all trades per se in terms of what's in your tool bag, but specializing in an aspect that makes the organization flow and tick the way it's going to be very efficient and very effective. So therefore, yes, there is a crisis, and I think the only way we're going to resolve that crisis is by doing things that we're doing now. Sharing with one another, networking, giving ideas that I've learned through all of my experiences and travels to you that you can build on, taking no pride in ownership for this piece or any piece, but giving it out freely so you can go and multiply that and make it even more efficient and more effective. Now, I had a note here to talk a little bit about what's the role of management in a rural environment. I think I may have answered that already. It is no different than an urban environment. The role is critical. I spoke to Steve Jobs and his lifestyle, but I can take that anywhere in the world. I can take it to a farmer down in Tuskegee, Alabama, and it's the very same thing. If I don't understand what crops to plant and when to plant them, if I don't understand when to till the ground, if I don't understand what products to put down to make it more productive, those are managerial skills at a very agrarian level, but very important. I can go back and talk about it at a very urban and technological aspect. Most of you may have seen recently the individuals in space, and they're talking about the types of things that they're experiencing up there. If we had not planned for that, which is a managerial function, if we had not picked the proper leadership, which is a managerial function, if we had not organized ourselves, we would not be there. And if we don't control the process, we won't exist there anymore. And so therefore, as I said, no matter if it's at the high level or the lower levels, they're equally important. And the skill set that you have, it's no different. Don't think because it's a rural entrepreneurship business that there's a difference. Entrepreneurship is entrepreneurship. Hard work. It should be hard workship, because you're the boss. There are no sick days. There are no off days. And that's true whether it's urban or rural. The difference is that the urban person may have a few more resources as a result of the amount of folks that are around him or her. But to be honest, sometimes all those resources could also cloudy up what tool you really need. Where if you're limited, you tend to make what you have work until you can get what you need that really works and become more efficient. So that's my take on this piece on talking about how important it is. But let me talk about the universality again, because I really want you to understand that you are, in fact, managers, all of you. Think about what you do. Just take a moment and think about, what do you do in life and how do you do it? And ask yourself that when I'm doing this, do I have to set up plans of any kind? Do I have to plan when to get up in the morning? Do I have to plan even what I'm going to put on? Do I have to plan how the work is going to flow? I got 5 bosses above me, so I don't have to manage. But when you get to task, do you have to plan exactly how you're going to motivate yourself to do the task the right way and efficiently for the person above you? And if you're not thinking that, you're missing out on something from that perspective. What I'd like to encourage you to do in this process of working managerial issues is to think about your own strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You may have heard that term before. It's a little analysis, and you'll see on the slide, it's called a SWOT, S-W-O-T. Strengths and weaknesses is what I really want you to concentrate on, because those are internal. You have control over those. In other words, you can, if you do an honest assessment, you can identify what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. The opportunities and threats are external to you, so that might be a bit more challenging to do and a bit more challenging to control, let's say. But I want you to do a good assessment. Take a look at, and let's do it this way, take a look at your strengths. What am I good at? What is it that I welcome a challenge at? What are the things that I know that if they woke me up 1 o'clock in the morning and said, Ed Brown, can you? I could say yes to, because I know that's my skill set. If you would take all of those things and put them together and make yourself a nice little list of those things and understand what you need to do to be ready to deal with them at any time, you'll find that you'll become much more efficient and much more effective in the managerial process in any area, especially as a rural entrepreneur. The next, I want you to take a look at your weaknesses. Don't beat yourself up. Just put a couple of them down. And I recommend people starting off with their 5 top. You know, put 10 and then drop those down to 5 on each side. 5 strengths and 5 weaknesses. Look at 5 weaknesses and say, here are things that if they called me at the midnight hour, I would absolutely say no. If they called me during the middle of the day, I'd say no. If they called me anytime, I'd probably say no. And then list those 5 things and say, you know, I would do it, but it would take me a lot of time. There'd be some reservations about that skill set and all. And then what I want you to do with those things is then begin to look at, how do I now overcome the weaknesses that may prevent me from accomplishing my task of being efficient and effective as a manager? And how is it that I promote myself or enhance utilization of those things that are strengths? Because when you do that, you walk into a place very confident as a manager to manage. You're going to get challenged. Managers will always be challenged. There will always be someone out there who will challenge your authority, your position, your knowledge, and all of that. And we'd like to say, well, I'm not a know-it-all, so if they challenge me, I'll just confess and press on. That's good. But you can only do that for so long as a manager. At some point, you're going to have to know something and combat the challenge, or you'll lose something even more important, and that is your respect as a leader and a manager. So as you learn that information, that knowledge, you'll find that you become a lot more confident in what you do and how you do it. And as you talk to folks, you know, they don't have to agree with your idea. But if you know your idea is good and you like your idea, then you sell that idea. Somebody will come along and pick up that idea and move with it as an entrepreneur. But you've got to make certain you've done a good assessment of your own strengths and weaknesses. And that's called a SWOT analysis. Now we can look at the others, but as I said, they're external. And so the opportunities and threats will be dictated about the environment by the environment that you're in, and also dictated some based on what's really happening with the folks you're dealing with. You know, do you have real competitors out there who might not want to see you succeed, or who might want to be involved with your success? And so therefore those opportunities and those threats will exist based on that. But the main key are the 2 internal ones, strengths and weaknesses. So try that on for size. I think it will help you out quite a bit. Now, let's say you are a manager and you finally admitted that I am indeed a manager, and I don't know what you do, whether you create widgets or whatever. The question comes in now, how can what you do serve the environment that you're in? I know you can serve the world, but we're not interested in that now. It's just like when I look at my strengths and my weaknesses, it's based on the environment that I'm in. I will broaden that as I move out of that particular environment. But for right now, We want to become efficient and effective in the environment that we're in. And in order to do that, I've got to understand that there's some universal principles that always exist. And if I understand those, I can get by those and then start working on a more specific one. So if you're in a rural environment, what kinds of things would you put on your list to say, you know, hey, these are things that as a manager I can impact. They may benefit you personally, they may benefit the entire environment, and it may benefit folks outside of that environment. But at least if you get that piece right, you've got a stronghold from which to operate, and you've got a good pilot piece in which to begin to develop your entrepreneurship focus for moving even beyond